Hello and welcome everybody to Big Bold You, a show that is dedicated to inspiring every person out there. And yes, I do mean you, to play bigger in your life, to be bolder so you can become the best version of yourself. Today is the very first Monday of 2019. We are so excited to start this year together, and we are beyond thrilled to introduce our guest today, Miss Registered Nurse Patricia Daiker. How are you?
Thank you. I'm good. I'm excited to be here.
Listen, I'm so excited for you to be here. And believe me, between the two of us, we are talkers, and
Planners.
We've hung. We're talkers. We're planners. But we've got a really important topic today, which is: do you work sick? I mean, you know the answer to that is yes.
Yes,
every
everybody.
single one of us has gone to work sick before. But one of the specialties, a movement that Patricia is leading, it's really in the grassroots arena right now, but she is really helping teach people how you can perform at your best and with acute illnesses or with chronic illnesses. And so we're going to jump into that a little bit later. But before we get started, we want to learn about you. Tell us about you, Patricia.
So, career-wise, I've been a nurse for almost 35 years. It'll be 35 years this year. And most of that in critical care. So I've worked most of my career, almost 15 years at Baylor University Medical Center in Dallas. About 3 years in ICU, but most in the emergency department.
Now, are you from this area?
No, I'm from Illinois. So
Okay.
I'm Midwest
You're a
farmer's daughter,
transplant.
girl.
You're a transplant to the area.
Absolutely. I'm the fifth of 7 kids, grew up on a farm in Illinois. And, when I was 21, I just wanted to see the world, and I up and moved.
I love that.
Yeah,
and so
yeah.
is this the first place that you decided you're going to up and move to?
Yeah, absolutely. I was thinking about Arizona, but a girl I went to nursing school with needed a roommate, and we were pen paling, right? We didn't have
It was way before cell phones and all, email, probably before email.
Absolutely. And she's like, she had moved down here because her sister relocated. And so she said, hey, we're writing back and forth. I need a roommate. You should come. And I'm like, okay.
Now, were you already a nurse at that point?
Yeah,
okay, so you had already gone through nursing school.
I finished nursing school when I was 20 years old. I was an RN and working actually back home in Illinois for a little bit.
And listen, I just want to say thank you so much for your service in that capacity, because it's a needed field, and you have to really love people to do it the right way.
Yes.
And I know you love people.
Absolutely.
So you've been almost 35 years.
Yep.
You came down here, and what has been your experience?
So, working in the healthcare field, I have always wanted more, right? So I started on the floor, then ICU, then the ER. And unfortunately, while I was working in the ER, I caught a virus from a patient and developed type 1 diabetes. So it's an autoimmune disorder.
And how long ago was that?
27 years, I think. I was
27 years
26
ago.
years old.
Okay, 26 years old. So here you are. You decided to go into nursing to help. And during that process, I mean, I didn't even know that you could contract diabetes through any other way than type 1 is you're born with it, and then type 2.
No, type 1 is actually you get a virus that attacks your immune. It's an autoimmune disease. So,
I did not. So children. Children that have type 1 diabetes, that's how it started?
Likely. It's an autoimmune disorder, but think how many bugs kids get.
Yeah, that's
right?
true.
We always have these viral illnesses, and so you see it present a lot more. Actually, some of the studies now show about 50% of the people that are type 1 are diagnosed as an adult. But we don't hear about it, right?
I didn't know that.
Right. So it's more. I was 26, and I have all the classic. I have the antibodies and all those things like that.
Wow.
So the ironic part, though, was that I knew diabetes, right? I had worked taking care of a lot of patients with diabetes. I'd been in the ER. Every insult that diabetes can throw at you, I had dealt with. I knew it very, very intimately, but I didn't see it in myself.
Right.
So I get diagnosed, and I have all these symptoms, and I don't get it. Right.
So this is very interesting to me, because it makes me think of, well, how many other people
Yeah.
are walking around right now with the similar symptoms, and they don't even realize that they might have diabetes. So what are some of those symptoms?
So those symptoms for me, I didn't see it. So for me, it's fatigue. So I'm an ER nurse working nights.
You're always fatigued.
I'm tired, right? And so it's, you have to go to the bathroom a lot.
Yes.
And again, classic.
They can still hear us. They can still hear us, and Ziggy is amazing. So
Awesome, sorry.
we can just keep on going.
Okay. So anyway, I didn't really, so at the time I had a new boyfriend, I bought a new house, I was working nights, I was working overtime. And when I wasn't doing that, I was hanging out with my friends. I was just burning the candle at both ends.
And so you thought, okay, this is normal.
I was tired and I'm like, eh.
How long do you think you had diabetes before you found out?
Probably only about 2 or 3 months before, because it hit me hard and fast. I lost about 20 pounds, which I was loving. That was great.
You're like, okay,
good. I'm eating like a pig, and it was wonderful. But so the key moment, and this is a little bit graphic, but so I was at 3 o'clock in the morning, and we have this phone in the ER, and it's this red phone, and we called it the bat phone.
Right.
And so when the bat phone rings, that means an ambulance is coming in. Oops, I just lost my guy.
I know. Well, see, and the awesome thing is because they can just hear us. Nobody even saw
knows.
that.
Yeah.
Nobody even saw what just happened.
Good. So anyway, it's 3 o'clock in the morning. I'm tired. I'm sitting at the desk, and the phone rings. And before I even am aware of my thoughts, in my head, I'm like, I hope it's a gunshot wound to the head. Now, that is horrific and horrible, right? That's awful.
Right.
But those cases, those patients tend not to make it. And so it's really quick.
Right.
And I was so tired that was my go-to, which really bothered me that I even
And you were like, oh my
that.
gosh.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. What am I even thinking about here? And so it was later that week, my doctor came in. I just happened to see him seeing another patient. And I'm like, I have chronic fatigue or something. I am just so tired. And he's like, well, what have you been doing? And I'm like, I tell him what I've been doing. He's like, okay, just get some rest, eat some good food, don't work so much, and come see me. And so when I went to see him in the morning. I remember I worked the night before, and he wanted me to fast all night. So I couldn't eat or drink anything after midnight, but I was up all night. It was like a horrible night.
Oh,
horrible.
no kidding, no kidding.
But anyway, my blood sugars that morning were high, not horrible. And he said, well, you work in the ER, so when you're there, go check your blood sugar, see what it is. And they were like 300s. That, which is really high. It shouldn't be much more than 100.
So, what's interesting to me is, I have diabetes in my family. My uncle was a diabetic. He passed away from complications with diabetes. Both my parents are diabetic. My dad controls it completely with diet and exercise.
That's awesome.
But the thing is that it impacts so many people, and it's one of the reasons why you're talking about the topic that you do, which is, do you work sick? Because people don't realize everything that's going on, and we're going to kind of jump more into that. But what I do want to know is, how has that impacted you personally, on a personal level?
Well, so early on, I should have known what to do, right? I had all the technical, I had all the skills to treat it, check my blood sugar. I knew all that stuff, but I still didn't want it. I didn't want it. I was miserable. I wasn't happy. And I just got to the point where it's like, this isn't fun anymore, right? And so, I'm like, how do I get off this crazy train? And so I went and saw a counselor. And I think this is where the crux of everything that I do comes, is that diabetes wasn't my problem. My problem was how I dealt with problems, right? And so my go-to strategy was avoidance, right? So ignore it, go away. I don't want it. It's not fun. Stay away. Right. And so that was the problem. And what I learned to do with the counseling was, I had a grief process going on, and I needed to learn some new coping strategies, because just because my pancreas quit didn't mean that I had the skill set I needed to face some of these challenges. And that was the big difference. And that really has been the change. And I would say the second piece of that is going into healthcare IT. So I left the hospital and went to work for a software company. And it was in that arena that I learned just sales process. I was really involved in sales and on the software development side. And so we had to get emergency room doctors to use software. They didn't want to.
No, I mean, I don't want to use software very much myself. I don't know how to do this stuff.
So We can teach you all day long, and if you don't do it right, we wouldn't call you non-compliant.
Right.
We wouldn't like chastise you.
But that's right, and that's such a good point, because people that are dealing with a disease like diabetes, and people that are doing things, if you don't do exactly what you're supposed to do in the traditional Western world, you are termed, you get that label of you're non-compliant. You're
non-compliant. You're a bad girl.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
And it's so not true. It's you're dealing with your life, and you're doing the best you can.
Yes, you hit the key on the head. Is everybody does the best they can with what they have.
100%.
Right? And so if you don't have the skills to deal with it, you're going to avoid it, because nobody's good at something they hate. If you hate something, it's natural push away. Right? You're not going to do it. So there's this whole process you go to get to acceptance, and where you're like, okay, this is it. How am I going to deal with that? And that's when you really start feeling better. And that's a whole other key of what we do, is feel better, right? If you feel better, you do better.
Right, 100%.
So if you're at home and you have a cold, you're not going to clean your house. You're not going to go run, and you're not going to do the things that you would do if you had more energy.
Right.
So it's kind of backwards to throw all this education towards someone and say, now that you feel your worst, go do all these great things.
Exactly. But one of the things, I'm really big into happiness. The International Day of Happiness is on March 20th, and I am the wall captain here in Dallas for that event. So you're going to be hearing a lot about that.
Yay.
But there's been so much research that has proven that happiness precedes success. Happiness precedes good health. Happiness, you've got to feel good to do good. And that really goes into the topic of today, which is really, do you work sick? And how do those illnesses impact you? And really, what are some strategies to lessen the impact? And we're gonna jump into that.
Okay.
And then I do want to talk more about what you're doing with diabetes and really the movement that you are at the very beginning of starting, because it's very exciting. So if you yourself are a diabetic, if you've got family members that are, if you know people, this woman right over here, you're going to hear a lot more about, because she's got a whole new way of helping and teaching people to deal with this. And I'm just super excited. So this is a little bit more about Patricia. She has been a type 1 diabetic for 28 years, registered nurse, corporate executive, author, blogger, diabetes coach. And she just I'm telling you, you are good to the core, salt of the earth person. And I'm just very blessed to have you.
I'm so excited to be here.
But before we get into our main topic, I want to tell everybody that for 2019, I'm going to just put this here, Think and Grow Rich, Napoleon Hill. One of the things that I do is I facilitate a mastermind. If you have not participated in a mastermind before, if you haven't realized that you can't succeed by yourself, you've got to surround yourself with incredible people such as the likes of Patricia and myself and other people. You really have to be grooming and developing yourself. I always say there's the three pillars of development. Personal development is number one. Second is professional development, and third is legacy development. So this year in 2019, every month we are going to facilitate a book of the month. And the book of January 2019 is Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. And we're going to be sharing some things as we go along. So as we are even talking about the content that we have today that Patricia has beautifully prepared for us, I'm going to be throwing in some things from Think and Grow Rich, because we can learn to really master our thoughts, and that's where all of our success begins. So let's jump right into your content on there's a word that you talk about a lot, and it's presenteeism.
Yes.
Explain to everybody what that means.
Okay, certainly. So, as I've started putting this program and these programs together, I did a lot of research about, and where my sweet spot is, it's the psychosocial needs of diabetes. Psycho is your mental, your emotional. Social is your life, your finances, your relationships, all of that. And so it's in that world of social, your work life, right? Presenteeism is when you go to work sick, right? And so you're there, but you're not doing 100%. You know, you're going through the motions. You're more likely to make mistakes. You're probably rubbing off on other people if you're not feeling well. There's really two kind of areas of presenteeism. One is an acute episode, meaning it's very limited. So you get a cold, you get the flu, your child is sick, something like that. And you show up to work and you are not in the game. And you can't really predict it. So that's one piece. The other one is people with chronic illness. And so you're going to work, and if you're not taking care of yourself and you don't have that wherewithal within yourself to manage your diabetes well, or whatever the illness is, you might be working with a blood sugar of 300. And let me tell you, when you feel like that, you're tired. You're not firing on all cylinders. Some of the things that we see with types of different types of presenteeism. So we might see something like migraines, back pain, asthma, chronic allergies, diabetes, depression, right? So any of those things are going to cause you to not be at your best. And so if you're not managing to it and really taking care of it, then you're probably getting subpar work in your office, which ripples out to everybody else, right?
Oh, yeah, there's no doubt. Okay, we got to make sure, Ziggy, can you go back to that first slide on presenteeism?
Yep.
Because here's the thing, Patricia has so much content, and you need to screenshot this.
Yes.
You need to screenshot this, because either you have employees that are coming to work that might be sick and you see a decrease in their productivity, or you are the employee yourself, or you're an entrepreneur, a solo entrepreneur, a self-employed person, and you're not bringing your best game. You know, one of the things, my master's degree is in training and development, so I'm all about helping people develop, but my undergraduate degree is in health and wellness, and I completely understand the importance that you really cannot be at your full potential if you are not at your full potential with your health.
Right.
And that's really where all this starts, you know.
Yes.
And it's something, I mean, this is actually a presentation that you present at corporate, in corporate settings and environments, because it's so important for people to be able to not just themselves recognize it, but if you are a supervisor or a manager, to be able to see these things going on in your employees as well.
Absolutely.
So, and then you were talking about some of the common conditions that people experience.
Yeah, so you think about, so just think about your workplace and the people you work with. You know somebody that has this, and you hear them complain about it. You see them deal with it every day, and it can be disruptive in some cases, right? So the goal is, how do we mitigate some of this stuff? How do we put in systems in place and corporate culture that can help us work through those things? Because the goal, again, is you want people to feel good,
Right.
And there's a financial cost we'll get to about, you know,
There's
how
a
that
big
impacts.
financial cost.
Big financial cost.
A
Exactly.
big financial costs
Absolutely.
that come around there. You know, some of the things that that I'm thinking about is, okay, if you are a person that you find yourself experiencing these symptoms, you know, what is your recommendation, the first thing that they should do?
So the first thing, depends on what it is, but you have to own it. I think that's the first thing is, if you have a chronic condition, it's very, very common to be in that victim mentality where, poor me, I can't do it, I have these problems. And, you know, and that's an emotional journey. So there's some emotions you must work through to get there.
Right.
And this little guy's never going to stay in my ear.
Hey, that's okay. You know, this is just part of live video.
Live
it
video.
just is what it is.
But yeah, so the first thing for a person is, and talking to people. So one of the things I work with clients is communication. So how do you tell your boss? How do you tell your coworker, like, I'm not good right now. I need to postpone this meeting 15 minutes, or maybe reschedule, or, you know, whatever the situation is. But not telling people is probably the biggest
But, you know,
problem.
I mean, here's the thing that's the first thing that pops into my head, because I've worked in corporate America for many years. I've led teams, and I'm just going to be transparent and honest, because tell me if you're out there and you're thinking the same thing. This is most of the cultures in corporate America is suck it up.
Yep.
Suck it up. Who cares if you have a headache? Who cares? No, we're not postponing this meeting.
Yep.
And so that's why people don't share what they're thinking or they're feeling.
Absolutely.
So as a business, whether there's 2 or 3 of you, or there's 500, how do you handle that in a way that is that is the most effective, efficient way.
Yeah. So there's two main strategies. So one is leadership. So it's a top down. So if you're the type of person or leader that compliments everybody for coming to work sick, working 42 hours in a day,
I'm
never
so glad you
missing a meeting
sick today.
But there's some of that where it's like, oh my gosh, you're burning the candle at both ends. You never go home.
Right.
And they applaud that. There's a cost to your business of that work style. And that's another thing we can get to is just what the cost is. But so one is corporate culture. Do you have enough vacation time for your people? So especially one of the big issues too is presenteeism impacts women more than men. So the types of things that we find in presenteeism, so again, depression, anxiety, migraine, stomach upset, things like that, as well as it fell out of it, as well as family care, right? So women just deal with things where on a daily basis almost your mind is elsewhere and you have these other things going on. So one, it's more disproportionate with women. And then, so you have to look at your policies, right? Do you have PTO? Do you have the ability to accommodate some of these needs your workers have?
Right.
And it comes down to like a question of this, is your preference to have a butt in the seat every day, or do you want productive employees? Right. And that's a choice. And so as a corporation, as a business owner, you can put some strategies in place to accommodate these needs. So it's not 9 to 5 punching the clock, right?
Well, and I think that the world in which we live in right now is you do have a lot more people that are working at home. Even if they still do go into an office and they work a few days a week, there's more flexibility. Now, do you find that if you're in a state that you're not at your best, do you perform better at work, or do they do they perform better at home than they do at work? Or if you're at a certain situation where your brain's just not in the game, just get well.
Yeah, I think it depends on the kind of work. So if you're a nurse and you're sick, you shouldn't be there. Right. If you're right. So there's some things like that. And those are the kind of things that make it hard because you're shift working, right? So then it's like, if I don't go in, they've got to find somebody else. So you have this natural ability to want to do that, right?
Well, you feel guilty.
Yeah, exactly. Huge guilt. And so when you look at where this happens and why people don't go home, right? So it's either the organization or maybe your work, and there's this part of a lot of people where they're the only one that can fix everything. Right. And it's that bus factor, right? They get hit by the bus, we all stop, they have to be there no matter what.
I know. I am going to say, I think that when you've been in a management or supervisory role, it is pretty funny when people think that the show cannot go on without them. And the earlier I can really vividly remember I was in my early 20s and I was working for a hospital. That was my first gig. Worked in healthcare, and I can remember thinking, you know what, this show really could go on without me. And that is the truth. Even though you are an incredible impact, the show can go on, and your goal should be that you are training those and that you've got a team environment where you can be as effective if you have a member that is down, so to speak.
Well, and I think, so again, another corporate strategy, when I worked in software, we had vacation days built in, right? So we had team environment, which is 5 or 6 people working together to create software. And if one of them were out, the team had to adjust. So when we were planning things, instead of planning everybody's going to be there for the entire time, we had a buffer. Right. You built in some time so people could, be on vacation or be out of work or, have a sick day, what have you. And I think the other thing is, as you start looking at, work productivity, so let's say you have one sick person who makes a mistake and then it has to go recycle, repeated, redone. So maybe they might have been there for a day. Right. But what did you save? Right. Or what was the cost of that downstream ripple effect? Right. So getting a product out in the workplace or out in the market that's defective because somebody wasn't on their game. Right. That's huge.
It is huge.
Right. And that's where we start really getting into some of the cost of this stuff.
And do you have some statistics on cost?
Yeah, I do.
Because people don't realize the impact that companies, corporations, and even those of us that are dealing in the peripheral side of it, the impact of chronic and acute illnesses that people are dealing with.
So it's a harder statistic, if you will, to track. So most of the time we're looking at absenteeism. How many times are people out of work for a day? Presenteeism is a little bit more difficult. There's been some phenomenal studies like in the last 5 to 10 years, but it's 10 times more of an impact to your productivity.
Wow.
Than people missing work. So 10 times, that's huge. And looking at just some of the studies that have been done, like 150 billion a year. That's just traumatic. I think the last one was pretty interesting. So it was New England Medical Center did a study at Lockheed Martin, which is the company we all know.
Right.
$34 million annually for people showing up and just not giving it all, doing their all.
Well, and so again, I'm sitting here thinking, because people that know me know I'm just hardcore.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, this is a major mindset shift that you have to make as an individual first, that you have to make with regards to your company and the organization and the teams that you're leading. Because most people really do think, suck it up, keep going. But you can't argue with those numbers that you just showed.
No, it's and I think it's kind of blind to most people because we're so used to it. We're always just doing our best and we're taking it for the team and we want to be a team player. But when you make the mistake that shuts down production or causes a wreck, let's say you're a truck driver or something like that, there's a lot of different things where if you're not at your best, you're putting your company and maybe even other people at risk.
Oh, for sure.
And so if you think of that bigger picture, but it definitely is a culture change and a personnel change, but it comes from leadership because if the leaders don't buy in, it's going to be really hard from that bottom up sort of thing.
And tell me, involved in these statistics is mental health issues as well, correct?
Depression is a huge one. And so when we think about depression, not only clinical depression, which is a chemical imbalance, right? But most people with chronic illness have some sort of depression within their life. So when you live with something without a day off, there's frustration, there's disappointment, there's emotion that comes with that. And so if you haven't dealt with those things and worked through some of that grief, so if we think about grieving, right? You lost the life you thought you were going to have. Grieving is anger, denial, bargaining, depression. And you get to acceptance. And that's kind of the happy holy grail where you want to get to, okay, this is my life. It's okay. I can do this and I'm going to take ownership of it. And so that depression can be not only, again, the clinical depression, but people that are just sad or tired or frustrated, right? That kind of manifests itself in the same way.
One of the things that when I'm listening to you, I'm really big into company culture. I'm really big into culture with anything and everything I do. On the mastermind that I facilitate, I have a culture that I really spend a lot of time and energy in growing. I've got a culture in eWoman Network. I'm the managing director for that organization. The clients that I work with, and I want it to be a family culture based on love, because one of the things I say all the time is people cannot grow unless they're in an environment of love. So as I'm listening to the statistics and to just the points that you're making, to me it goes back to, if you have a company culture based on love, you have a company culture that's based on you genuinely care about the person first as a person and then as an employee second, which when I was in management, that's exactly what I would say. Every time I would interview somebody and I bring a new employee on, I would say, I care about you as a person first and as an employee second. And I think when you genuinely care about people first and you see these symptoms and nobody wants to do a bad job. I mean,
they don't.
I just don't believe that. Now,
I totally
believe
agree.
me, I know some may, but I think that at the core of who most people are, they want to be successful. They want to produce well. And if you've got that company culture of, you know what, we're going to take care of our employees and this is a safe environment, good gosh, the impact, the positive impact on your bottom line would just be
and you think of some
tremendous.
Of these companies that do invest in corporate culture, right?
Yes.
That people want to work there. They have good retention. They're happy people. And so along with love, I think one of the most important emotions that people want to feel is peace.
Yes, that's
right.
So true.
So if you're like frustrated and tired and stressed and working really hard, you just want a little peace, right?
Oh, yeah.
And so, I'm about ready to give up on that guy. I'm done with him.
It's like, bye-bye.
It's gone. It's gone. So, but literally, I think those are some strategies you could build into your workforce, into your routine. So when I worked at the healthcare company, like in the afternoon, every afternoon, we would do push-ups and planks. So about 2:00, everybody knew what time it was. We'd show up. And we would move, right? We get up and we get our body moving, and that just made you feel better. It got you out of that
for sure.
computer mode. And
I and I want to say recently, but it's been within the last 12 months. I was scrolling, I was on the scroll hole on my phone, and I saw this article about a school out in California who, instead of sending kids to detention when they were misbehaving, they had a yoga program.
Yes.
And they would send the kids, out. They took them out of the classroom, and they would be in a alternative space for the day. But instead of just having them sit there
with all their anxiety and frustration,
they were teaching them yoga. And I thought, that is an amazing idea.
So it's all those sorts of things. So there was a friend of mine, and she owns a really wonderful yoga studio out in South Lake, and they have these gongs and bells, and like having that sort of environment. And I think of hospitals and nurses, so it's really high tech, high energy places. Imagine if you had a place that you could go sit, and it was quiet and calm, and just for 10 minutes.
Right.
Back in the day, we all smoked, and so we went outside and we took our break there.
I know that I really do think that's hysterical, because I worked there in the hospital for many, many years, and the nurses and the doctors would go out back and they would smoke, and that was just commonplace. That's what people did.
But it's also a way to get away.
Right.
And so if you didn't smoke, you had to stay inside with all the
crazy. It's so true.
Yeah.
I mean, how many of you have worked at a place where the smokers would go out and take a smoking break, and the rest of the people who don't smoke are saying, well, how come we just can't go out?
Exactly.
It was acceptable. You could go out and take a smoking break, but to your point, if you're not a smoker, you're
stuck. You're stuck, right?
And then people would say, well, I think I'm just going to start smoking so I can go take a smoker's break.
So what if you built in a place or something like that at work where you had that time? What if it's corporate culture that we all do jumping jacks every 20 minutes, or we go for a walk in the afternoon? So one of the things, I'll jump ahead a little bit, but one of the biggest key factors of not having presenteeism is an active workforce. So people that are moving, if they're up, if they're moving, if they're doing stuff, they're far less likely to have all these chronic illnesses and flare-ups of, colds and flus, and activity is the number one thing. So if you can build some activity into your work, so it depends on the workforce.
Right.
Activity if you have a really sedentary workforce, but perhaps, some quiet and peace time if you have imagine if you worked in a factory with all that noise and that sort of thing.
Right. And these are things that are not difficult to do.
No, not at all.
It starts with changing at the top, change your mindset. But I really want to say, like you look at the solution here, focus on feeling better. I think if everybody took on ownership and said, you know what, it's my responsibility.
Right.
It's my responsibility to be healthy, to feel great, to show up, and even really started to talk with the people that you work with and that you associate with, and I know a lot of companies already are doing this, but this is something that is really, really doable.
And the impact is really quick. And so one of the things and we talk about trying to do the right thing and live better, some people don't know how to do it. Right. So that goes back to my programs. Even for me, I knew all the medical things. I knew how to do insulin. I knew how to check. But I didn't want to, right? And I couldn't make myself. And so I firmly and 100% know that you will do what you believe, right? And so if you don't believe you like something or it's not a value, like I can say I don't hate diabetes. It's part of my life. I've gotten over it, and I'm at peace with it, right? It's that peace. So I'm not struggling and fighting, and it's possible to get there.
Right.
It is what it is. It's not going away, so it doesn't serve me. But that's not a mindset that just happens.
No,
right?
it
That's
doesn't.
a skill that you can learn.
Well, and that's, to your point, that's exactly, everything is a skill, everything is a habit. You've got to make the decision. It's not going to happen overnight. One of the things I say to people all the time is success happens in decades, because I like to be honest with people.
It's not.
I like to be honest with people, and success doesn't happen overnight. It doesn't happen overnight, and it really gets to one of the things that we do every week is we have an Ask Jen's question, and we're going to bring this Ask Jen's question up because Patricia and I talked about this, and we were dying laughing because I was actually working with a client last week, and one of the things that she asked me on the Ask Jen's question here was, she said, Jens, how long do I have to keep doing social media? How long do I have to keep doing all the marketing that I'm doing? How long do I have to continue to pay for the IT group that I have? How long? And I just smiled, and I looked at her and I said, as long as you want to continue to receive results.
Right.
That's the answer. So I was talking to Patricia about it, and she died laughing because you have the same.
I have the same thing. So people are always like, I have to do this, I have to do that, I have to check my blood sugar. And every time it's, you get to.
Exactly.
Right? So I get to. And so if you're talking about social media, gosh, you get to. You get to keep telling your story. You get to tell everybody, hopefully, the new and creative things that you're doing. So if you only had to do it once and you were done,
right.
What a sad state of affairs that you're not growing. You don't have new stories. You should be sharing what your customers are doing and, all this new and creative business. And so I think you get to, right? We get to do it. That's why we go into business.
Well, and I think the other thing, too, what's so important with the world in which we live is people are the same. They really are.
Absolutely.
I mean, people want to be loved. People want to be heard. People want to be seen. People want to succeed. People have dreams. And the more that we share our experiences, even the topic that we're talking about right now, there are people that go to work sick every day. Mm-hmm. There are people every day that are functioning at 50%, and they don't even realize that, you know what? Okay, identify what's going on.
They don't even know they're doing it. It's so common, right?
Yeah, exactly. They're not even
live.
aware. They don't have the self-awareness.
Imagine if you're like a mom working nights and as a nurse, you have 3 kids, you're taking care of your sick parents, doing shopping, tending the household. You don't realize how much that might impact your productivity or your ability to think clearly, right?
Well, yeah, the solution that you have is focus on feeling better.
Yeah.
And I think that, I know that you've got a slide on that, and I don't know if we went over all of it, but that's what I think is one of the biggest messages of the strategies to lessen the impact is the solution is focus on feeling better.
Yeah, absolutely. Because when you feel better, you'll do better. You just will. You could imagine, so you have a chronic illness, and now somebody today, as of today, tells you you can't eat the same, your culture is different, how you live with your friends and family, your work, all that changes. Mm-hmm. And they just say, go do it. You probably don't feel very well at all, and you're not going to feel or have the mental energy to go do those sort of things. So let's focus on, how do you feel? What are those emotions? And let's work through those so you get to a place where you feel better, right?
Well, and I think
find your voice.
When we talk about the solution of focus on feeling better, I think a lot of people live their lives numb.
Yes.
They live their lives numb, which is one of the reasons I love the grassroots movement that you have taken on. It's really, one of the things about Patricia that I love so much is she's a faith-based person, and it really is a calling.
Yes,
and I want you to share with people what you've been inspired to do and what you are currently working on, and the reason why you're going to see a lot more of Patricia.
Hey, okay. So it really is a calling. After I left corporate America, I really had this gnawing in my heart of, okay, where's this diabetes, my frustration with the medical system, my understanding of how the medical system works, and what I've learned in corporate America, and then just this, there's something missing. And my whole life, I've always been about solutions. And so I feel like with my company called Dragonfly Lights, which is Dragonfly is about transformation and light is about awareness and making things grow and change. It's all about working with patients with chronic illness, either at the individual level, group level, or even at a corporate level, to bring these 5 pillars of my program to people to help them deal with the psychosocial aspects. Most people don't even realize they're grieving, right? They don't know. They just don't like it, and they're frustrated, and they're angry, and they're mad. Those are emotions you can work through. So, there's so many programs out there with diet and exercise and diabetic education, which are absolutely necessary. I'm totally not saying that.
Exactly, you have to do that.
But they fail because people don't have the skills, and they're resistant because they don't like it, right? So we deal very much with the body, but not with the mind and the soul, right? And I feel like my whole journey has been to kind of bring this other side to people who are struggling. And I think I know diabetes intimately, I know it very well, but it works for other sorts of chronic illnesses as well. But it's about finding, your voice and how to communicate and how to live your life on your terms and not feel victimized and go through these emotions. And once you kind of get to that place, then you're naturally curious. Then you start going, okay, I have this thing. What am I going to do about it? And when you're curious, it just comes to you so much better than when you're pushing away.
Exactly.
Right? And so there's this whole way of living your life that I'm happy. I'm fine. I have diabetes. Yes, I do. But that is not who I am. It's
It doesn't define you.
Absolutely.
It doesn't.
Absolutely.
You know, and one of my strategies, everybody that knows me well, and those that watch the show on a weekly basis knows that laughter is one of my strategies. And I'm telling you, there are so many physiological benefits to laughing. You know, and I believe I actually believe, I'm going to check this stat.
Okay.
And Ziggy's so good, he'll probably check this stat before we jump off this. But when you laugh, I mean, that hard, great belly laugh, your immune system is boosted at a higher level for up to 24 hours. And so I think that's one reason why I'm so healthy, Patricia, because I'm telling you, I laugh all the time. And one of the things that we do here on our show is we have a segment called Laughter is the Best Medicine. And what I love it is when I have these incredible guests on and they have a really funny video to share. And so I said, Patricia, do you have a funny video? And she said, I sure do. And this is just a little clip out of that video. And it is a diabetic comedian.
Everyone got their own little paragraph. And that was exciting. I was like, how are they going to describe me? What are they going to go with? Good comedian. I would have taken that. Affable funster, something like that. Well, here's what they actually went with. Diabetic comedian. Diabetic comedian. Now, this annoyed me for a number of reasons, Apollo. Firstly, because it is technically true, right? It does some basic research. I am type 1 diabetic. I am a comedian. Put those two things together, I can sort of see how he arrived at diabetic comedian. But I still think it is a confusing moniker. Because I'm here to let you know tonight, diabetic comedy is not a thing. That is not a genre of humour that exists. Hope none of you have read about me on the BBC News website. When I walked out here, you were like, oh, I can't wait, a bit of diabetic comedy. Look, Cheryl, we've read about him. I wonder what he's going to do. What is this diabetic comedy? Is he going to test his blood sugar on stage and we can all guess what it is? Maybe he's going to do one of his catchphrases. Pancreas? What pancreas?
Okay, so what I love so much about laughing and is because really nothing in life lasts forever. You know, I tell people all the time, it's like the bad times that you have, the struggles. You know, one of the messages that Napoleon Hill shares in his book is there is an equivalent seed of success and goodness for every temporary defeat, failure, and struggle that we have. So there's an opportunity. And I think about this all the time because, you know, happiness and sadness is on a continuum. Success and failure, it's on a continuum. So the same level of failure or sadness, sorrow that you have experienced, this equivalent seed of happiness, success is available for you. Absolutely. And one of the things he talks about so much in this book is, you know, when you do struggle and you do have temporary defeat, and it's going to happen. But again, remember, I'm just going to be honest with you. I'm going to be honest with you all the time. It is going to happen. You are going to fail. You are going to make mistakes. You are going to have errors. You are going to say things that you regret. You know, some days your hair's not going to look as great as the next. Sometimes you're going to have your earphones that are going to fall out. It's going to happen. So it's not if it's going to happen. It's just when it's going to happen. But always remember that when those things happen, the depth of that sorrow or the depth of that mistake or error, you have the opportunity to experience the same equal amount of success and happiness. And that makes me happy, Patricia.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, it really does. And so along the way, I think that the more we can laugh, the more we can laugh about our situations, what we're going through, and really incorporate laughter and fun in our cultures, that with the places where we work, but as well as our homes. You know, I really encourage you in 2019, as you're setting your goals for this year and the things that you're going to focus on, you can't do everything. What is the one thing that you are going to do in 2019 that is going to make your life happier, where you can be healthier, and you can bless the world with your gifts and your talents. Please share that with us today. I want to say thank you so much,
You're
Patricia,
welcome.
for coming.
Yes.
I am going to have her come back because there's no way we can get into
No.
all of her greatness, but you will be seeing her.
Thank
and
you.
I'm honored to be a part of your journey.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
Thank you. So please share this with your friends, your family members. Let us know the things that our talking points really kind of spurred you to think about yourself and the changes that you want to make, and let us know if we can help along the way. So until we meet again next Monday, 3 p.m. Central, be big, be bold, and most importantly, be you. Bye-bye.